What is up, refiners? Welcome back to our Severance rewatch waffle party, where we're going back to the Severance basics, rewatching season 1, and talking about what it means in the context of season 3 and the Severance world. Today, I'll be reviewing and analyzing season 1, episode 2, entitled Half Loop. It's called Half Loop because that is the address that Mark goes to in order to visit Petey and learn more information about what's really going on at Lumon. So if you're new around here, make sure you subscribe, like this video, sign up for notifications. If you're coming home once more to hang out and chat Severance, be sure to leave a comment below with what you thought about this episode. I thought this episode was chocked full of interesting things that may or may not have any payoff at all, but are still very fun to talk about. You know the drill. The first 3 minutes of this video, I'll be talking about overall summary, spoiler free for just this episode. So if you're watching season 1, if you're joining along, if you haven't watched season 2, you'll want to stop after this summary, but I will warn you when we get into spoiler territory. The rest of this is going to be juicy discovery, digging deep, refining what we've seen on screen in order to discuss more. If you haven't already, make sure you're a member of my Discord channel and my Patreon. Certain Discord channels are open to everyone, including a couple Severance channels, so be sure to hop over there and discuss a little bit more what happens in Severance season 1, episode 2, Half Loop. We learn more about Helly, her introduction, and her resistance. The episode opens with Helly recording her consent to undergo the Severance procedure, during which a microchip is implanted in her brain to bifurcate her consciousness. Honestly, anything to do with cutting open a brain, this is how I know I would never be a doctor, because I was eating my lunch as I was watching this. Safe to say I was extremely disgusted. Upon awakening as her innie self, she's introduced to the MDR team and trained to sort the enigmatic numbers that elicit certain emotional responses.
Go through this spreadsheet and look for numbers that are scary.
Despite attempts to acclimate her, including a very generous melon party, Helly remains unsatisfied and defiant. She continues to try to exit the Severance floor and is thwarted every step of the way. Despite all the tomfoolery, Mark takes the fall for her and ends up getting punished by Mr. Grainer in the break room. This episode also revolves around Mark's outside world and Petey's plight. In the outside world, Mark calls in sick and visits the address provided by Petey. Mark finds Petey in a deteriorated state, suffering from what he calls reintegration sickness. Being the only person who has ever undergone this procedure, it's kind of new territory for him. Petey reveals the existence of the break room and plays a recording of Mark being coerced into these repetitive apologies. Mark offers Petey refuge in his home, kind of unaware of the full extent of his condition. I think this episode really delves deeper into Mark being like kind of half of a person. He doesn't seem, actually seems like someone who only spends maybe 8 hours a day or less fully conscious. And for those 8 hours, he's not even fully conscious because he drinks so much. I think we really get a sense for just how broken and fragmented Mark is as a person. Back at Lumon, Irving experiences disturbing hallucinations of black sludge seeping from his workspace. He's sent for a wellness check where we meet 2 new characters for the first time. Both Miss Casey, who's the sort of odd, quirky, slightly strange wellness coordinator, as well as Burt, who is the chief of optics and design, or O&D for short. What sparks is a sort of subtle yet significant connection between the two. They're both interested in art. Irving later talks about Burt to his own department, to which Dylan seems rather hostile.
I've met that guy. He's a fuck. You didn't tell him where we are, did you?
More to come on these two in future episode reviews. That was my brief overview. Now you've been warned. Let's get into spoiler territory, where I'm going to dig into the very significant parts of this episode to discuss what it could mean for future Severance seasons. This was a Petey heavy episode. I have a whole other video about what Petey knew, where I analyzed just Petey's interaction with Mark and with himself for the first 3 episodes. So I won't be diving too too far deep into that, so I'm not repeating myself. So if you do want to take a deep dive into Petey, what Petey knew, and what we can learn about Lumon and reintegration from Petey, make sure you check out this video right here. We begin with who we know is Helena Eagan giving her consent for the severance procedure. We also see a much different side of Milchick as he escorts her around.
To drink 3 raw eggs and milk each morning.
I've heard.
You guys were right on my last video and I missed this. That is actually Mr. Milchick who tells Helena Eagan what Mr. Eagan's favorite breakfast is right before she undergoes the severance procedure. Now she says, yeah, I've heard, so it seems like she's been told this before, but perhaps he mentions this bit of information in order to test the recall or the efficacy of the procedure in separating information that they had just learned even moments before getting their brain bifurcated. The way that she says, I've heard, means she's familiar with this lore. This actually reminded me of her laughing at the kind of bullshit Dieter Egan campfire story during the Ortbo experience. It's almost like some of this lore and myth is reserved for the employees of the Eagan family rather than the Eagans themselves. So I kind of wonder deep down how much of this Helena thinks is actual bullshit. This leads me to a question of why did she get severed? So a lot of you have talked in the comments about maybe her father forced her to get severance, maybe to get severed, maybe she got pressured into it like everything else in her life. But another thing after seeing James McCreep Eagan is maybe she just wanted to freaking get away from him for 8 hours of the day. We already know that they live together. And the noise that man makes at just her eating breakfast, I would hate to have Mr. McCreepy lurking around the corner.
Maybe we should take them raw.
She says to Milchick,
Sorry if I freak out on you a little.
almost it's like expected that she'll have some sort of resistance. Milchick lies to Helena when she asks if she's trying to leave. We also get a better peek of where this very important stairwell leads to. We see light up there, but we can only guess it goes back into the lobby or somewhere upstairs because it really doesn't look like an outdoor stairwell that leads to some secret escape hatch or an outdoor exit. When Mark goes into work, we see him browse through a checklist. Now, I thought this was very funny, especially the entry acknowledge the Kier painting verbally or silently, as well as review employee lunches. So they do eat. We do see Mark's flash into the fridge in season 2 that there are lunches every day. A lot of weird stuff around eating in Severance in general, but why do the lunches need to be reviewed? Mark dusts off a photo of Petey, and for the first time, it seems like he's realized that his friend is never coming back. He takes all the photos off the desk and puts them away. When Helly comes in to that little break room, not the torture break room, but the other break room with the kitchenette, she asks about, like, did a weekend pass? Did a day pass?
A weekend just happened.
Yeah.
I don't even feel like I left.
And Mark talks about how it's helpful to focus on the effects of sleep. And this was actually hilarious to me, knowing that most days Mark is probably coming in hungover. You know, when we wake up with a hangover, which I feel like most of us have, the only person you can blame is your past self. The Saturday night miscellaneous Gab who made the decision to have that last margarita of the night because she was really enjoying herself. So I have no one to hate but her. But imagine some other asshole is putting you through a hangover each and every day as you're supposed to stare at a computer screen under these horrible bright fluorescent lights every single day. Outtie Mark, I'm realizing more and more, is the real op. Dylan explains the perk system to Helly. She seems more intrigued by Mark's quote crystal head cube, which we know he got for refining Allentown in a day. We know now that the Allentown room was the Christmas room, which is also one of the first files he ever refined, and therefore kind of this eternal hell that her Innie version, the Christmas writing Innie version, has been in the longest, as well as being married to Dr. McCreepy.
Hey, Mark, I just printed out the passage of the handbook on changing out group photos. Just might be good to peruse when you're between things.
I love Irving in these early episodes. He is such an ardent rule follower.
Sorry to interrupt. I know you're training Helly. I just noticed you removed the group photos from the desk.
Always standing up when Mr. Milchick enters the room. It's also kind of serves as comedic relief as well as just the brainwashing on the severed floor. He lives for the rules, but it also says something about his character. He is precise, observing with this military type discipline and rigidity, something that I think both his innie and his outie share. During the ball rolling icebreaker game, Irving says something really important.
You all know, and I've worked here for 3 years, and
He says he's worked at Lumon for 3 years. However, know from the LinkedIn post that Apple TV shared that Irving has actually been at Lumon 9 years since the beginning of season 1. So the question here is it just MDR that he's been in for 3 years, or has he only been a severed employee for 3 years? Now, many are speculating on why Irving knows about that testing floor exports hallway in the first place. Many wonder if he was actually an employee kind of on the outside, just like Burt, who then got severed allegedly. Was he kind of a bad person that was working on the testing floor? Was he a subject of the testing floor? What do you think? Drop your Irving theories below, but this is just another hint. There's so much more to Irving's story and his past at Lumon than we understand. We learned that Helly is allergic to almonds, has weak enamel, which, like, why would you out someone like that, Mr. Milchick, and is 30 years old? Milchick talks about how a life at Lumon is protected from such things as death, and they should feel grateful because of it. I thought this was very interesting considering the kindness reforms that Milchick institutes in season 2, especially the Ortbo. So he really thinks that they should feel eternal gratitude that they protect them from these things like death. Was that seal placed in the Ortbo? Was the Ortbo there in general, the Dieter Eagan whacking off and melting into the forest, a opportunity to elicit more gratitude from the severed employees who were in an act of rebellion at the time? Irving notices black paint under his nails for the first time, which is a hint to what's going to come later in the episode. Mark seems to ask a little bit more about Petey, show some more emotion, but then shuts it down after kind of a stern look from Mr. Milchick. Helly says,
You're just done asking about your best friend because our babysitter told you to stop?
and Mark says,
Yeah, Milchick's a nice man. When he says something, it's best to listen.
I don't care.
Because he can't always be nice like that.
there's something sinister about the way Mark kind of warns her almost about this. Now, we know from episode 1 that Petey says that both he, Petey, and Mark have complained. They've tried to complain. They've tried to lodge complaints. Mark seems rather happy and jovial, content on the inside, but we get this idea that he's been through some shit. Helly decides to test if the code detectors actually work, and from this we see Grainer show his big ugly face. Mark seems pretty shaky around Mr. Grainer and actually tries to rescue Helly, even if it means him getting in trouble, because he knows what's coming. And then we see Miss Cobell waiting for him at the end of the hallway. Meanwhile, let's talk about Outtie Mark, which I kind of talked about a little bit. So we see him on a date with the midwife at that restaurant. You guys, I'm not usually the one who notices music. What I heard playing in the background, now I'm gonna play it for you. Where have I heard that before? What song is that? It's the I'll Be Seeing You song that is played when Mark's tearing up the picture of Gemma. It's what's playing during Christmas. It's what's playing, it's played so many times in season 2. This is like the Gemma anthem. And this song makes my skin crawl, I think, because of the sinister way it's used. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean that Mark is just carrying Gemma, that she hangs over him like this ghost, this person he cannot move on from? Is it a sign that she's still alive and she's like physically present in the same plane of existence? I thought it was so fascinating that it was played during their dinner date. Mark and the midwife are walking out of dinner. He doesn't know that Minnesota and Montana are like different places. It seems like he either is just not paying attention to the midwife because he's not really ready to date, or this could be another hint, something I've talked about significantly in a lot of my videos, that there's this weird lack of intelligence like all over Kier, almost as if like Kier is this isolated place. It's not really in the United States, or it's just that Mark is drunk and not paying attention. But why would he mix the two up? But then again, I also knew someone who thought Ecuador was in Africa, so we didn't all pay attention in geography class. We get a brief glimpse of Mark's interaction with the Whole Mine Collection, the WMC. We really only hear about them one time in season 2. I was actually hoping we get more of them in season 2. I do think that we'll have to see more of them in season 3 so we can learn about these units of resistance outside of Lumon. Also, Mark is such an ass. He does such a good job of playing this very subtly drunk alcoholic. You don't know when he had too much, but he did, and it's just embarrassing. And the midwife lady that he's on a date with is clearly very embarrassed. Mrs. Selvig's behavior is so fascinating. Knowing what we know now, I just love every scene that she's in. She brings her weird cookies over, which
I ate your shitty fucking cookies.
she also says, my late husband was a carpenter, which like this bitch does not stop lying. Like she's addicted to lying. She also talks about that these shitty cookies have chamomile tea in them and that she's doing some weird experiment so she won't be offended if he doesn't like them. We do know that they were awful.
I ate your shitty fucking cookies.
But then later she says something very interesting, which is,
Well, come by the shop, okay? I'll give you a mugwort bath bomb that'll make you sleep like a rag doll.
sleep like a rag doll. This kind of brought my senses on board because there's two things she's trying to give him that facilitate rest and sleep. A bath bomb that's supposed to make him sleep like a rag doll. Chamomile tea in the cookies are supposed to make him sleep. And also even previously at the end of last episode, she talked about like the saints need 8 hours to bless you, so she hopes he's sleeping. So why is Mrs. Selvig / Miss Cobelvig so interested in Mark's ability to sleep? Also, what shop is she talking about? She clearly doesn't work at a shop unless this bitch has like 3 jobs. Does she say that because she knows he'll never come? Or does she pretend to work at a shop so that she can actually bring him things like remedies or bath bombs or sleep aids and he'll just take them without questioning her? The next scene is Mark passed out on the couch. We know Mark is an alcoholic, so we know that he could have easily drank himself to sleep. Or did she put something in the cookies? I obviously don't know if this is this huge Easter egg that they've been working on for all this time, or I'm just really overanalyzing the situation. Maybe she sees that Mark is making his innie come in hungover, or is this a hint that sleep and something about sleep deprivation or circadian rhythm, dreams, falling asleep at work can actually be a real threat to Severance and be some sort of mirror or some sort of looking glass into what's going on there? We know that Irving uses sleep and lack of sleep to send his innie a message. So is there this real danger of if they're coming in hungover, sleep deprived, that they do doze off at work and somehow get this dream or this window into their outer world? So she just wants to make sure that Mark is sleeping. Back at Lumon, Dylan brings up the fact that Irving has been previously disciplined for dozing off.
Wow. A lot of confidence for a man who once got disciplined for dozing.
So it made me wonder, how long has his outie been trying to send his innie this message? Is this something that has been like years in the making of trying to get that specific circadian disruption correctly? Irving does eventually doze off again, and we get the first vision of him seeing the paint, which seems to freak the poor guy out significantly. He isn't being sent to the break room, but instead Milchick is sending him into a wellness session to meet Miss Casey. I don't think they want them sleeping because they can dream, and that is almost like this mini reintegration in a way. Irving meets Burt for the first time. Here is a revelation I had. Burt was a plant the whole time. Petey in the greenhouse tells Mark that they keep them separated from the other departments. We know that they spread propaganda. We know they don't want them meeting. In general, even in the employee handbook that we see in the Lexington letter, it talks about not talking or interacting or anything with other departments. So if they're this strict on it, how would they have this kind of oversight of not staggering the wellness appointments unless they wanted Burt and Irving to meet? Maybe they knew Irving was falling asleep and they needed to bring him some sort of eye candy, guy to have a crush on, something like that. Maybe they've met in a previous life so that Irving was more focused on this person and not focused on sleeping. And maybe we'll prove the fact that Burt has always been a plant. Maybe he's not severed at all. and more clues in this season is going to lead me there even more. I know this has become a big meme or joke of Severance about Miss Casey saying, please enjoy all facts equally, but she stopped him and like made him lose 10 points every time he just had a slightly different reaction to any of her facts. What do we think this is about? Taming the tempers, that's what you need to get out of a wellness session?
Your Outtie is a friend to children and to the elderly and the insane.
Insane. Interesting. Could Irving be that good doctor therapy man with the weird mustache that Devin mentioned in episode 1? Probably not, but a girl can theorize. Can she? Dylan tells Helly that they only finish 1 in 5 files and that the finger traps represent the finish line.
Yeah, but why don't we always finish the files?
It only keeps so long.
He says that the data expires. I genuinely don't know. What does it mean that they only have a finite amount of time to actually refine the files before the data expires? Is that just to create urgency? Is that really not even true? What does that mean? And what does that tell us about what someone who is such a prolific refiner like Dylan, who or what is he actually refining? I really hope we get answers to this in season 3. Mark meets with Petey in the greenhouse, and I do talk more about this in my Petey video. He's not doing well, probably because he isn't drinking those weird breast milk shots and is also living in a cold greenhouse. We see Petey's map for the first time, and I've talked about this at length that I think it will be important for season 3 as the innies hold the severed floor and go and explore. He also talks about the break room, and it's like he can't even put it into words. Instead, he takes out a smuggled tape of Milchick torturing Mark in the break room. I don't know how he got this. Maybe this is what convinced Petey to reintegrate. We still don't know exactly what pushed Petey to undergo this severance brain surgery basement. Maybe she had a tape of Petey and showed that to Petey and that made him get severed, and maybe now Petey has another tape for Mark. How did he smuggle this out? Seeing Mark and Petey interact to this degree and like how freaky things were with Petey under like the distress that he was under and the urgency with which he came to Mark to deliver this message, it's even more slightly odd and a little bit disappointing that Petey was just dropped off the storyline and kind of never mentioned again in season 2. I really do hope that this comes full circle in season 3. Mark brings Petey into his home, into his basement, and Petey starts to have these very weird hallucinations, headaches, and nosebleeds. He's also getting a call, and we don't know who this is from. We might think it's Recape. We know he's extremely paranoid. He might be ignoring all calls. Maybe he's scared to get the people he's working with in trouble because he feels like he's being watched. Anyway, that is my review and analysis for Severance season 1, episode 2. Are you watching along or are you just watching my recaps? Make sure you comment below with your thoughts. I'd like to take a moment to thank my Waffle Party VIP members on Patreon who are so amazing. Thank you for supporting me even through the off season. Thank you to Chris Pizeski, Bo Dierker, Daniel Ariano, Dolores Abernathy, Jim Rodney, Marlon Yamzon, Matt Winbury, who helped me set up my Discord. Thank you, Matt. You are a rock star. And Mr. Vaca. And thank you to all of my other amazing paid Patreon members. There's exclusive Discord access for you. Separate channels, our Expanse book club. I'll also be doing a live this Thursday, every Thursday from now on, replacing our long gone Severance Thursday. So instead, we're just gonna hang out on Thursdays. We'll talk the Severance rewatch. We'll talk The Last of Us. We'll talk about all the other things we're watching and what's inspiring us. In the meantime, dive into my Severance lore or some of my other videos, and I will see you all soon. Make sure you stay safe out there, and whatever you do, don't get severed. Bye.